Giving birth is already wild, but these twins made it insane. The doctor couldn't process what he was seeing, and neither will you. But before we start our story, smash the like button now. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new stories. When one of these twin sisters got pregnant, she never dared to dream that her other half would get pregnant too. But when the doctor noticed this detail, the sisters got the shock of their lives. The story of American sisters Sarah and Leah is so special, we're still wondering how it was possible. It could definitely be called a miracle. The sisters never planned to get pregnant at the same time, yet it happened. But the whole story got even more special when the ladies went into labor at the same time. Despite the fact that we had always had a magical twin bond, it was absolutely not pre-planned to be pregnant at the same time. It was Thanksgiving when Sarah wanted to surprise her sister with the news that she was pregnant. However, that turned out differently than she had imagined. Sarah. I let her tell her story first. When I was told that she was due just days after my due date, I took out my ultrasound too and put it next to hers. We jumped for joy. We were so happy for each other. None of us really knew what we were seeing. In theory, something like that can happen, but of course, you don't take that into account. It seemed as if the ladies' lives were completely attuned to each other, especially if the two would also give birth at the same time. It was the end of June when Sarah felt that her little one was ready to be born. She was then driven to the hospital with screeching sirens. Not much later, Sister Leah also knew that it was time. Her own contractions had started. The question was, who was going to call herself a brand new mother first? When Reed Joseph was born in one hospital, Samantha Lynn was born at exactly the same time. Although this is a wonderful story, there are many other such special pregnancies. Let's look at Jalynn and Janelle, twin sisters. Jalynn and Janelle always wanted to get pregnant together. However, it took a while before they managed to get it done. Both had to endure a long, difficult period in which they were unsuccessful. Their pregnancies were also accompanied by a few serious setbacks, a hormonal abnormality in which ovulation often fails to occur. From an early age, the identical twins talked about how nice it would be if they got married and got pregnant at the same time. Unfortunately, it took some doing. Before Jalynn became pregnant, she had 2 miscarriages. Janelle suffered from PCOS. When the 2 sisters eventually got pregnant at the same time, it was a special moment. It seemed that life for the 2 sisters was finally going well. Sadly, their joy was short-lived, as something terrible happened not long after. Jennifer, the duo's older sister, died unexpectedly after a violent asthma attack. She left behind 2 children and a husband. Naturally, the sisters had a difficult time dealing with the situation. Also, the sisters did not often see each other, mainly because Jalynn's husband, Brandon, was a well-known top athlete, professional baseball player for the San Francisco Giants, so the couple had to move to San Francisco. As a result, Janelle lived about 1,300 kilometers away from Jalynn, in the place where the 2 had grown up. Brandon makes a living as when Jalynn was ready to give birth. Her husband was preparing for a competition elsewhere in the country. She seemed to be on her own. Janelle was also ready to give birth. This was a dilemma for their parents because they could not be present at both births. They wanted to support both their daughters and hold their grandchildren in their arms. It seemed impossible until one of the doctors made a remarkable proposal. Perhaps it would be possible for both sisters to be admitted to the same hospital. This would allow them to be together and for their parents to be near both of them. After a few horrible months, this was a welcome solution. Only a few hours apart, the twin sisters both gave birth to a boy. However, something remarkable had happened. Despite the fact that the 2 boys had different mothers and fathers, the 2 looked incredibly similar. Even the doctors said that they could have been twins. They looked like 2 drops of water. In addition, they had come into the world at almost the same time. A special pregnancy also took place in Massachusetts, USA. On the same day, in September 2017, Becky Pistone and her sister, Rachel McGeoch, both welcomed a child into the world while they were in adjoining rooms at Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge. These two twin sisters gave birth not long after each other, which made it even more special. Moments later, the doctors discovered something that they couldn't believe. Becky and Rachel have done everything together for their whole lives. Wherever Becky is, there is Rachel, and vice versa. They share the same interests and hobbies and have the same friends. When they were little, they were so much alike that they each had to wear a name necklace because even their parents couldn't tell them apart. It all seemed sweet and innocent until they realized what they could do with these superpowers. They were expressly placed in different classes to avoid confusion. The little girls soon found out that they could get away with switching classes during tests. Becky did the math tests for both because she was good at it. Rachel was good with languages, so she did those tests. This is how the twins started to discover what they could achieve with their twin power. As the years passed, the ladies largely left their tricks behind. But of course, their bond always remained special, even when they both chose different studies, and Becky moved to New York. Rachel, on the other hand, stayed closer to home and ended up in Boston. But then, a moment came where they realized that they needed each other more than ever. The girls thus started to lead their own lives a bit more. The only thing that the sisters differed in was the urge to find a boyfriend. For example, Rachel was always dating and found it fun, while Becky had less interest in this. Almost immediately after Rachel graduated from university, she moved in with her boyfriend. For Becky, that seemed a bit too early. Yet it was not long after graduating that Becky also seemed to have encountered the love of her life. However, she wanted to take it a bit easier than her twin sister. Since she suffered from a fear of commitment, she kept her own apartment in New York for the time being. One night when Becky was home alone, she received a touching phone call from her sister. On the other end of the line was a somewhat sad Rachel. She said that she and her boyfriend were ready for the next step in their lives, but it was taking quite some effort. Rachel had been trying to conceive for a while, but had not yet succeeded. Rachel was full of emotion and decided to ask her sister a special question that seemed to come from deep in her heart. Remember when we used to fantasize about having children? Do you also remember that sometimes something didn't work out with one of us until we tried it together, and then it worked? As you know, I can't get pregnant, but with your help, it should work. Can't you try to get pregnant? I'm sure we can do it together. Becky had no idea what to say. The question came as a surprise to Becky. She had to let it sink in for a while. Of course, she had secretly dreamed of having a family herself, but she hadn't really thought about it recently. But the sisters were now over 30 and had their affairs in order. Becky realized that trying for a baby wasn't such a bad idea at all. After being quiet on the phone for a while, Becky replied, "The question was whether the two would be able to do it together." Although the chances were slim, it was only a few months before Rachel appeared to be pregnant. After waking up one morning with a strange feeling in her stomach, she decided to test herself. Her feelings had not failed her. The test turned out to be positive. Full of emotion, she immediately called her sister. Everything seemed to be just as they hoped. Less than 3 weeks later, Becky also tested positive. The twins had done it together again. They were both expecting. When the time came for the babies to be born, both Rachel and Becky were hospitalized at the same time, and the ladies each gave birth to a boy just hours apart. Despite the babies doing well, the doctor discovered a remarkable thing. Naturally, the sisters were overjoyed with their babies. Because the boys were born so close together, it felt a bit like they were twins themselves. Both Pete and Sam were restless and noisy after birth. The doctor on duty thought that it might be caused by stomach cramps, but then they made a strange discovery. Pete and Sam mainly cried when they were apart. However, the moment that they were together, they calmed down. Despite the fact that the two cousins had only been in the world for a few hours, they had already built an inexplicable bond. Rachel and Becky have transferred their twin power to their children. It seems that Michelle and Sarah. Michelle and her husband Pete had never really thought about children. If parenthood was for them, a small one would certainly be welcome. If not, they were at peace with that too. One day, 33-year-old Michelle felt that something was wrong. She felt unwell, like she was pregnant. She then decided to test herself. Her feelings had not failed her. Michelle and Pete turned out to be expecting a baby. The happy couple then made an appointment at the local hospital to see if everything was okay. There, the ultrasound showed the expected result. However, there was more to it. Michelle and Pete looked at each other in surprise. One fertilized egg had split in two, creating different embryos. Apparently, Michelle was pregnant with identical twins. History seemed to be repeating itself, as Michelle herself was an identical twin. As had happened with her and her sister, Sarah, I couldn't believe it when the sonographer told us this special news. Chances of identical twins are typically not high, but the fact that it also happened to 2 consecutive generations was described by doctors as very rare. No gynecologist or obstetrician in that hospital had ever experienced this. After seeing 2 hearts beating, nurses were sure that they hadn't made a mistake. Since the little ones shared the same placenta, it was clear that they would be identical. It was a situation that had hardly ever happened before. After the twins were born, Michelle realized how difficult it must have been for her parents to be able to tell her and Sarah apart when they were little. Both of her girls were so alike it was almost impossible to tell them apart. Anna and Lucy DeCinque, who have shared everything since birth. The 2 30-year-olds have the same job and the same Facebook and Instagram account, and they even share their boyfriend, Ben Byrne. Finally, there is the bizarre story of Australian twin sisters. We think that's logical because we have identical tastes. They announced to the world that they both wanted to become pregnant with him at the same time. Several years ago, Anna and Lucy announced that they wanted to marry their joint dream man. However, even before their wedding plans, we share our boyfriend, so we also wanted to share our pregnancy. The question was, how would their children be related if this were to happen? Would they be siblings or cousins, pregnant at the same time using in vitro fertilization, and Ben was the father of the 2 babies? There is no jealousy. He gets twice the love and twice the attention, so you won't hear Ben complain. Twinning and winning, said the twins. Regardless, the women got. The story on the next page seems almost impossible. Identical twin sisters Tina and Louise braved the 1 in a million chance of having their babies in the same ward, in the same hospital, and at the same time. Tina was due on April 10th and her sister Louise on April 15th, 5 days apart. But when Tina's water broke, it miraculously happened to her sister too. The twins, who say that they do everything together, even shared the same room after giving birth. Tina gave birth to a daughter, Delilah, who weighed 4 pounds, while Louise gave birth to her 6-pound son, Reggie, an hour later. The experience of giving birth together is the most amazing thing that I have ever had, said a visibly proud Louise. The twins really enjoyed sharing the whole experience together. It was great to be so close to each other and to be able to support each other when it was needed, said Tina. She remembers being amazed that after her delivery, a midwife came to tell her that her twin sister had also given birth. We wish the twins and kids all the luck.